treat him like a baby. All the shawty's taking all his cash. Please don't stare, you might won't get a money, come on my respect. Way too many niggas in the cut, I love love. Always wish we get the first blow. I don't care, I'll just pretend. I guess I'm better than these other chumps.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Ladder League Season 2. We are here today for Week 2, Rung 4, between Seed 9 DIMEI versus Seed 10 FLUP and Seed 15 TFRESH. Very exciting race. I'm joined today by Laser on commentary.
Hello?
Laser, are you excited to get into this race? What are you hoping for?
Yeah, I'm really excited for this race. All three runners here are really close in PB, and this week, or this Rung 4 match is honestly very important, where a potential winner of this match can go all the way to Rung 2 next week, and then the loser can end up in Rung 5, which is the elimination rung. So this is actually a very important match for these three runners. But looks like we're starting right now.
Yeah, and like Laser was just saying, this is going to be an incredibly close match just due to these runners' PBs. And actually, all three of these runners have gotten a brand new PB in this last week. DIMEI with the most recent one, getting a pretty chunky PB all the way to a 224. But all of these runners are definitely capable of lowering their time, so I think it's going to be incredibly close.
Yeah, FLUP PB'd, I think, couple days ago on Thursday, getting a lower 227, and then TFRESH PB'd just under a week ago, getting, I think, a high 27.
Yeah, and the no reset setting, of course, is going to play a big factor, but something that's interesting about DIMEI's most recent PB is that it was basically his first run that he did on stream a couple of days ago. So he definitely, especially with how good his sob is and how just much he practices, he's definitely able to crank out a really good time.
Yeah, I think this match, honestly, is going to be more about, like, making sure that we don't have any disasters. Because really, you just don't want to end up being the one who loses this race, because then you'll end up in the bottom rung, and that it's a little bit better this season with the leapfrog mechanic and having the chance to get out of, but you just don't want to end up in the bottom rung no matter what.
Yeah, and it is interesting to think that all of these runners at, the 224 to 227 level, that they're already threatening being in the bottom rung of week 3. It's kind of crazy just the level that everyone is at nowadays. Looks like DIMEI having a little bit of trouble taking a death here. TFRESH not getting a good warp. So everyone just losing a little bit of time trying to finish up this negotiations.
Yeah, this is just looking like the average no reset negotiations. Don't think anyone here really getting a time that they would normally take in any percent attempts, but not too big of a gap between the three runners.
Yeah, and looking just purely based off of their sum of bests, we can see that their current best possible time, DIMEI and FLUP, very close to one another, and TFRESH is about a minute and a half behind the other two, but you could point that to him just not really playing much any percent in the last couple of years and only recently returning to attempts, so he definitely still has a good competitive edge and a potential in this run.
I'm not sure if I saw that properly, but I'm not actually sure if DIMEI saves the game, because he entered a little bit before FLUP, and now he seems to be further ahead. I could be completely wrong, though.
I was not paying attention to all the runners, but TFRESH did forget to save.
Okay, so that is going to be a 3-second penalty for him, and hopefully he saves at the end of this level, because if he doesn't, then the penalty just gets even worse. DIMEI getting over. FLUP having a little bit of trouble with the tree, but looks like everyone got ICS.
Yeah, and luckily nowadays with ICS, you don't have to worry too much about your first room of invasion time-wise, just now with Episode 1 resets for Jedi Battle Seeds. So that's definitely not as big of a factor for later on once we get to Episode 2.
Yeah, most runners in like this season of the Ladder League have adopted the Episode 1 reset, just because, like, especially since we have to save after 1-1, it saves even more time, but it also just makes the run a lot more consistent. As Saber said, you don't have to worry about your invasion room 1 time just as much.
Looks like DIMEI missed log jump. So did FLUP, so unfortunately that gap is not going to close anymore for FLUP.
Don't think any of the runners are going to end up going for drop gymnastic here. I know TFRESH is not doing it, but this is another strat that started being implemented with the Episode 1 reset, since before no one did it because it would make this room slightly faster and you wouldn't be able to get on like the old Episode 2 reset seeds.
Yeah.
But yeah, none of the runners going for it.
Yeah, and it looks like so far TFRESH just playing very solid throughout both of these first couple of levels, and DIMEI and FLUP experiencing just a little bit of trouble. Still not causing too severe of a gap, but I mean already 21 seconds between TFRESH and FLUP when it comes to their invasion exits, which might not seem like a lot now, but you know, at some point you have to make that time back up if you want to remain competitive in this race.
Yeah, TFRESH did remember to save after invasion, so we should be good on that now. So the 20-second gap between FLUP is only, or it's slightly less because of the penalty. But I'm actually excited to see pod race this time. I don't think any of the 3 runners are going to be going for Godfred, so hopefully all 3 of them can just get a nice clean 0 death or 2 death or whatever they go for. Yeah, hopefully no disaster.
Yeah, and I think just as a whole, we're seeing a lot less disasters this year compared to last Ladder League. Last Ladder League, it was very common to see runners around this rung failing just the typical pod fraud in some capacity. I think Seed has said this in previous weeks, but I think we saw like somewhere in the range of 10 to 15 total misses across the 8 weeks that we played Ladder League. So this year has been a lot better. Have we even seen any like full misses? I know we've seen a little bit of trouble from a couple of runners doing God fraud, but I don't think we've seen any just true pod fraud misses yet.
Yeah, I don't think there've been like any 3-minute disasters this season yet. Last year, like as someone who missed pod fraud 4 times last year, um, I'm kind of glad that the community as a whole has kind of solved this problem. I know for me personally, like learning God fraud kind of allowed me to get better at like the normal lap 2 pod fraud. So maybe that, along with just people not wanting this disaster to happen, has made people practice the level more.
Yeah. TFRESH did go for ground shots, but just with his player 1 positioning, his player 1 did not end up hitting any of the targets on the left side, so I don't actually think it saved him any time. It didn't look too slow, but definitely not optimal.
Yeah, I'm seeing in the chat that apparently DIMEI didn't save after 1-1 or 1-2, so if he does not save here, that could be disastrous for him.
Yeah, and he probably doesn't have the stream open, so we can't really let him know. Hopefully he just remembers here.
Okay. So
is
He
safe.
will not be getting disqualified, luckily for him, but that will be a 10-second penalty, I believe.
Yes. And with that, it does make it a little bit more even, kind of the gap between TFRESH to DIMEI to FLUP. It's about 10 seconds in between each of them, with TFRESH still just maintaining his lead so far.
Yeah, I don't expect to see any like major lead changes until maybe Feed or Maul. Hopefully no one loses any time here.
Yeah, I don't know. It's possible that we see even a runner play it a little bit safe. I want to say that maybe TFRESH, or maybe this was a different runner, ended up just going for like 4 death pod fraud recently just to play it a little safer in a race setting. But regardless, we shouldn't see any too large of swings just from this level.
Yeah, I do think I remember TFresh saying that in Ladder League he was gonna go for like the super old or not the old version of Pod Prod, but like the easy version of Pod Prod where you don't even move your character after the initial like out of bounds, and you just let him kind of gain speed after taking a bunch of deaths.
Yeah, and that's understandable in a race setting because, I mean, even that, you're losing minimal time compared to if you make a larger mistake and then have to either reset the level or just miss the trick entirely. It's some people would say it's worth it to just play it a bit safer, but I also think a lot of these runners would be at the place where they would feel comfortable with it. It does look, just based on his camera setup that was happening there, that he is not going for 0 death.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you saw that, but Daimi actually taking a death during like the pod race level.
I did
He
see
got
that.
shot like 4 times. That's actually I've never seen that happen. But oh, T-Fresh, I think he's going for 2 deaths? That definitely hit the lab trigger. Okay. T-Fresh getting pod
Playing it
flood.
very safe. Daimei also playing it safe. FLUP the
Not going
only
for 0
one
deaths, yeah.
going for 0 death. The setup looks good. Good call-in. So we're actually going to see FLUP making up some time, being the only one to do 0 death between these 3 runners.
Yeah, I think that actually means Daimi will I flubbed past Daimi if you account for the penalty.
Yeah,
Flub
which is
definitely saved like 10 seconds on that pod fraud alone.
Yeah, and that's the kind of time save that you need if you're in FLUP's position. Just a little bit at a time. Don't play it safe compared to the other runners in attempts. And eventually, if other people play it too safe, then you can just keep crawling your way back. And yeah, now with the penalty, FLUP's definitely going to be ahead of DIMEI.
Yeah, what's interesting is in a lot of the races we've had so far, like the favorite of the race usually seems to be behind after like the first couple of levels. But in this case, even though Daimi, who has the fastest PB, the best seeded out of the three, based on like the predictions, I think he has the worst odds. And he was also predicted to win the match by the least amount of people.
Yeah, it is definitely interesting. I wonder if obviously his PB that he just recently got, if he already had a 224, if that would kind of sway people's votes, just seeing that now he's multiple minutes ahead of the other runners. You never know how that can swing things. But how are the chat predictions looking for the most recent prediction that was put in there?
Yeah, so right now the prediction is for the best episode 4 exit, and Daimi has about 50% of the points, T-Fresh has about 30, and Flub has about 20%. So I assume people are expecting Daimi to maybe take a lead right here out of Theed, which he is known for. He has played this level a lot.
He has. This is definitely one of those levels where he randomly will just play for like 10 hours a day just doing ILs and grinding out rooms. And that shows since he is currently the CG holder for Theed, which is very impressive for somebody who is 15th place on the leaderboard to have a CG in arguably like a really difficult level, just execution-wise, to put together.
Yeah, we can also see here TFRESH is going to be the only runner of the three who is not going for Theater Clip. I think he was trying to convince us that Theater Clip saved less time than I actually did. That's just a classic TFRESH thing to do. But yeah, no disaster from any of the runners.
We are having a bit of a button room moment for TFRESH. Been pushed off the button multiple times, lost quite a bit of time. Visually, DIMEI has actually gained the lead. Now, obviously, there's still the penalty to take into account, but that was quite a bit of time loss for TFRESH, just not properly standing on the buttons.
Yeah, FLUP didn't have the best button room either. DIMEI getting like a clean slash onto the button and then the players instantly showing up. So now in Theed 1, we're going to see DIMEI going for left side. I think TFRESH is going to go for the elevator strats. FLUP, I'm not actually sure.
I think
Looking from the
left
line, it looks like left side.
Yeah.
But a very clean left side from DIMEI.
Very clean, yes.
Oh, TFRESH. He didn't force the bridge all the way. And he has to wait an entire cycle for the elevator. And then FLUP going for a little bit of a safer version instead of crossing the gap, taking a slightly worse line just to ensure that she doesn't take a deep, really tricky, especially with the camera.
Yeah. DIMEI looked like he had a very good out of bounds and just playing very solid so far in this Theed. The race overall still incredibly close, but DIMEI definitely showing that practice has paid off.
And then in this hangar, we're going to see, hopefully, DIMEI going for the newer strat in this level, where you force an object, you leave one of the droids alive, and then you force an object to gain camera pan movement. And it allows you to just move R2 to the end of the room during the camera pan. DIMEI missing one of the swappy strats. That is not something you expect to see out of the Theed Master.
I do think one of the reasons that happened is because he went for incredibly risky shots where he was in a much further along position compared to what other runners do. And it looks like he
not getting the force.
Did miss the force, unfortunately. So just riskier strats causing not necessarily too much time lost, but just not using that to his advantage to save a little bit of time over the other runners.
But yeah, DIMEI will be taking the lead, at least on the stream, after this level.
I do think it will actually be close. Obviously, TFRESH also has a slight penalty to take into account as well. So it looks like we actually have DIMEI, with the penalty taken into account, still in the lead. And then FLUP would be in second place and TFRESH would be in last when you take into account his 3-second penalty.
But yeah, this race has been very close so far. However, episode 2 is definitely somewhere where that could change. Episode 2 having a lot of difficult levels like Camino, Droid Factory, and then levels like Jedi Battle, where depending on the seeds these runners get, or their pillars, could also lose or save quite a bit of time. DIMEI missing lamp jump once.
Yeah, and it's good that he got it second try because lamp jump is definitely a mental trick where if you miss it once, it can just kind of throw you off your game. TFRESH also missing it once. Now missing it again, allowing FLUP to get further ahead just by getting it first try. but TFRESH with a nice recovery to finally get it.
Yeah, lamp jump is definitely a trick that isn't too like difficult, but if you miss it once, you can kind of snowball into just losing a ton of time. Luckily, that didn't really happen for TFRESH. He managed to pull himself together on the third attempt. But yeah, lamp jump can definitely be quite a difficult thing to do at the end of episode 1.
TFRESH also did the slashes into this room, which is something that Zach Muffin advocates for. It is faster to swap your player and then do a jump slash, which is one of those just minor little time saves, which is interesting for a player like TFRESH who hasn't played as much any percent in recent years, actually has mainly played more original trilogy on TCS than he has any percent. So even though he's a very experienced community member and has been around for a long time, he's still learning some of these strats that these other runners have been doing for the last year or so, especially with some of the newer, bigger skips that we're going to get into later in the run.
I'm not
FLUP
sure if you
having a bit of a
saw,
moment here.
but at the end of like the droid clearing section, DIMEI almost accidentally did droidic skip.
Oh,
He jumped to the platform and he realized he was gonna land on it, so he had to like turn back and take a death.
yeah. Oh, FLUP had a moment, but then TFRESH followed it up with a death from too early of a jump on the raising platform. So it was actually going to be really close until TFRESH took that death.
DIMEI getting 1 frame off of both cycle skips. Very unfortunate.
Let's see for FLUP. We got one and then both. Great job from FLUP there.
Yeah, FLUP, even with the minor DM3 disaster, should be saving some time to these other runners.
Yes. I think TFRESH did get the second cycle skip, which should be arguably a little bit easier for him since he plays a lot of double controller. I don't know if he does it for this room specifically. Kind of assume so. But it's a little easier to time when you have both of your players through the same type of device. Because pressing buttons on a controller versus pressing keys on a keyboard can vary slightly and make it harder to time that exact frame.
Yeah, TFRESH, he is known for being a big double controller advocate. Um, he plays basically the entire run double controller as long as it doesn't lose time. So he will switch to keyboard for sections like the Chancellor elevator drop and warp, where you need to do that on keyboard, but he will try and play as much of the run as possible on double controller.
Yeah. So just looking at our episode 1 exits, if we take into account the penalty, DIMEI got a 21-11, FLUP with a 21-19, and TFRESH with a 21-33. So actually very close between DIMEI and FLUP, and TFRESH not all that far behind. Just overall a really, really solid race so far. It's really come down to like tiny strat differences and then a little bit of execution differences, but everyone having kind of their ups and downs so far this run. But this is exactly what we want to see from this race so far.
Yeah, you talked about strat differences, and I think episode 2 might be like the first place where we can properly see that. Not in this level, BHP should be pretty standard between all three of these runners, but when we go into a level like Camino, I think DIMEI and FLUP are going to be going for all the strats. R4 fly, they're going to be going for Camino button skip, they're going to be going for Camino clip, but TFRESH, on the other hand, he does not do either Camino button skip or Camino clip. So we're going to see if going for maybe the safer strats ends up paying off.
Yeah, that's definitely an interesting thing for someone like TFRESH who has been around for so long and is just now updating to more of the current meta of strats. And for some of those things, it's just that he hasn't spent the time truly learning stuff, and others are just like by choice. Kind of like what we see with like Justin, who still doesn't do the episode 1 resets for Jedi Battle, just because that's what he's used to right now with only recently returning. So it's almost kind of a case of you can't teach an old dog new tricks when somebody has just been used to something for such a long time, especially just coming back to D-Rust. He's not going to implement absolutely everything right away. Very solid first light room from DIMEI there.
Ooh, FLUP missing one of the lights backs it up pretty decently. But TFRESH, on the other hand, he is having a
Having a
lot more
moment.
trouble. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's I think that's another thing that's really easy to let the mental side of it kind of mess you up. On top of the fact that those lights are very deceptive. It's really hard to tell sometimes where they're at, so it's good to find kind of a rhythm of exact movement that you do with your players, but if that alters just slightly, it can really throw you off.
Yeah, going into the second light room, I think we see DIMEI actually. I'm not sure if he intended to hit the left light with player 2. I know that's a strat that some runners go for, but we might see FLUP go for like a more standard room where he will send both players to the right after destroying these turrets. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't actually know that I've seen that where you send the players separately to the bottom part of the room.
Yeah, I think
Flip
it does
is
save a tiny bit of time, but it is uh, much more difficult, as well as most of the time you're gonna be leaving some of the turrets alive, which can make this end torpedo section slower.
yeah. And this level is just hard in general with the 1P2C. This final room, it is incredibly difficult to save time by having both players in, just with how finicky the targeting is, the flying with both characters at the same time. And I remember when I first learned this room that I was just told you should just do it one player for a while until you get used to 1P2C. Because doing it one player fast is a lot easier than trying to implement two players where it's really hard to save time with. And we saw FLUP in the final room there just having another just moment of kind of messing up the movement and not having great targeting, causing quite a bit of time loss.
Yeah, so we're gonna see DIMEI here. I believe he goes for the keyboard version of
Wow.
Butterfly. Wow, that worked.
That, yeah. I'm surprised with that edge boost. I actually thought he would, uh, just because of how low he was when he took off, that he wouldn't have enough height with the fly, but I guess, he's got a
Yeah.
setup that works for him, and that's all you need.
I was a little surprised because there's like two keyboard setups for this trick. One of them was developed by Bricko, and then one of them was developed by Frost, where the Bricko one, you go like slightly further with R4 to change the camera. But I feel like DIMEI went for that version, but
Oh,
then
Daime
he
is
also did it really
inbound.
quickly. Looks like he's gonna wait just to get rid of the deactivation so he doesn't have to deal 3 damage again.
Yeah, and I did see TFRESH did miss R4 fly once, which puts him and FLUP a lot closer together. Daime with another KBS miss,
I don't know
which
if this
opens the
works.
door up for FLUP.
His
If FLUP,
respawn is really high up.
that looks
Okay, this
good.
is out of bounds.
Yeah. So that does
And then,
open the door for FLUP to close the gap a little bit. And then even with TFRESH just playing it safe and not risking it isn't going to be that far behind.
oh, FLUP getting no
Oh no.
deactivation, but then popping in bounds. TFRESH is going to be saving quite a bit of time with the safer strats here.
Yeah,
Did
to
end up
both
paying off for him.
runners. I actually think unless you're really used to no deactivate, that it's to your disadvantage if you get it when you're not expecting it. Because you kind of just then, you're like, oh, I got no deactivate, and you're reacting in the moment, and it's easier to have a mess up like popping in bounds.
Yeah, if you do no deactivate, it's also faster to fly like before you would adjust the camera properly.
Yeah.
So having the slightly different camera might also have made FLUP mess up a tiny bit, popping in bounds. TFRESH taking a death in this Django chase section.
FLUP also missing drops in warp, having to go into the corner with Obi-Wan as well.
I'm curious if TFRESH is gonna go for drop Chim Warp here, because as a double controller runner, it seems like something he would go for, but considering he has Obi-Wan on player 1 instead of player 2, it doesn't look like it. Unless he's gonna drop out here. No. Okay, let's take a look at DIMEI's screen as he does Camino Clip, see how many droids he kills. I think that's one there.
FLUP is
Two
going for
droids.
drop Chim Warp.
So if I
And
saw
gets it.
correctly, that's two droids by DIMEI, so he should be on either seed 2 or 3. TFRESH killed one.
I think that
And
was
then,
just one from TFRESH.
yeah, I feel like going for just like forcing the blocks here so you can use the panel is actually a lot more consistent for the episode 2 reset, since it makes it harder to like accidentally kill droids.
Yeah, that would make sense. FLUP getting a very good Camino clip also killed 2 droids just like DIMEI, so we should see some similarity between their seeds.
I think FLUP actually killed like one or two more right at the end as she was entering the fight, so it might actually be really bad for her.
Hmm.
Because if you kill 3 or more, you might end up on seeds. You'll be on seed 3 at the very best if you don't get a Cantina spawn. But seeds 4 and 5 after are quite a bit worse.
Overall, this was not a great Camino for any runner, but it seems like TFRESH had one of just the better times overall execution-wise, but part of that was also just not going for as many of the tricks. So probably not too much of a shakeup overall, even though everyone had their own individual mess-ups throughout the level. It's still probably going to be pretty much where we were at before.
Yeah, TFRESH not even really saving that much time over DIMEI. Even though DIMEI popped back inbounds twice on KBS.
Yeah, it looks like FLUP did make up a couple of seconds here over TFRESH, and then both made up some time to DIMEI as well. Not by too much, but the gap out of BHP was a lot more significant than it was now, just mainly due to what was happening in KBS for DIMEI.
Yeah, and then speaking of Droid Factory, all of the runners had like relatively clean or not button skip, relatively clean Camino clip rooms. So the chance of a soft lock in the turnstile room should be extremely low for all of these runners, especially since they all reset after episode 1. So the value for the Gizmo soft lock could be much, much lower than what's needed for a soft lock.
Yeah, and we have to talk about it earlier as commentators, or else we would curse any of these runners and end up getting posted in a YouTube video. So we got to get it out of the way here so that they can't clip it.
Yeah, really don't want to end up on Dexter Jetster clips. That would be unfortunate for us.
Yeah, so far, really no Dexter Jetster clips this run. That's kind of a gauge of how you can tell if there's been any major disasters.
don't think we're gonna see a bucket fly from any of these runners. Or I should say pixel fly, not bucket fly. DIMEI just doing the more standard 1P2C after the bucket.
FLUP does take a death, which is very hard to avoid. That Droideka is Freddy, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Something that runners have been doing, like, this is not a super recent thing, but more recent than like some other strats, is they've been keeping in player 2 at the end of Camino, so they can 1P2C the first room of this level, and that allows you to have Anakin on player 1, and you'll lose less hearts, so you can go into the conveyor belt room and approach Frederick with hopefully 3 or 4 hearts instead of the 1 or 2 you'd usually have if you're just doing the room 1 player.
Yeah. We did see a little bit of a strat difference in Bucket Room. TFRESH ended up just doing 1-player strats, taking R2 to the very end. And FLUP did 2-player, which saved a little bit, but then she was not able to make one of the jumps with Anakin and actually had to drop him out, so it didn't actually save too much.
DIMEI doing the Senor strats here, actually getting pretty lucky with the power-up. Not with the power-up spawn, but like keeping it long enough in order to jump slam the droidekas and then also kill one with a deflect. Still somehow taking a death though. That is quite unlucky. TFRESH getting a deflect on the upper droideka. This usually means you'll be able to enter the next room without taking a death, but having trouble actually activating the panel.
Yeah, probably more advantageous to just take a death at that point if you're struggling to swap to 3PO. Just take the death as your other player, focus on the swap, accept the little time loss. Instead, I think he was focusing too much on not dying, that's what caused some of just the faltering with his other player.
Yeah, TFRESH saving some time here compared to FLUP's Droid Factory, but the DIMEI lead has extended as well, just by a tiny bit.
Yeah, we're looking at just over 20 seconds when we take the penalties into account between DIMEI and these other runners, which we need to be keeping an eye out for FLUP's Jedi Battle Seed and just see if that has any significant impact. Even just like looking at DIMEI's pillar that's happening right now, TFRESH is very much known for his pillars, grinding it out for BTT and whatnot. And DIMEI just lost quite a bit of time on first pillar.
Yeah, that was quite unlucky, having both droidekas just not roll at all and having their shields up.
Tyler, on the other
quite a
hand,
bit of time. Tyler getting a really, really good player.
Very, very good from TFRESH here. And is starting to clear the second pillar while DIMEI is leaving. That already is just showing how significant that first pillar was for DIMEI. Honestly, making up a large portion of the gap between those runners.
Yeah, FLUP also not getting a very good pillar 1. Not as bad as DIMEI's, but still pretty bad with the droideka. Then TFRESH going for the pillar 3 strat where you go in front with Padme. So, like, the idea of that strat is to get the droidekas to roll towards player 1 since he's farther away, and then you can shoot them as they're rolling towards you before they can put their shields up. But unfortunately, he didn't actually end up getting like any of the droidekas at all.
DIMEI took a little bit of time finding the last guy. TFRESH seems like he found him just a little bit faster.
This seed that TFRESH is on, it looked like 3 at the start, but...
And FLUP Okay,
Not
FLUP
sure.
does have a guy right away, which is a good sign, but definitely in a slightly different position. I actually think this looks fine for FLUP.
TFRESH making up almost the entire lead that DIMEI had in Jedi Battle. Oh, FLUP having trouble finding this last droid. Yeah, all the
It
way
was
behind her.
behind her. Wow.
But I'm pretty sure the later part, like the wave 2 of these later seeds, is the worst part. So hopefully she's able to find all these droids.
Yeah, and already just looking around doesn't seem too certain. We got a bunch right there. Just looking for the final super battle droid. Definitely not too bad. But does allow DIMEI and TFRESH to just maintain this slight gap that's happening between the runners. And now TFRESH only 2 seconds, well, I guess it would be 5 seconds behind DIMEI after that Jedi battle when taking into account the penalties.
Clean first barrier skip from DIMEI right there. This, oh, wow, TFRESH actually managing
very
to
close,
not fall down. That was a lot closer than he probably hoped for it to be.
Yeah. And it looks like FLUP is right around 35 seconds behind TFRESH, so about 40 seconds behind DIMEI. TFRESH, though, having a moment with second barrier skip here. Getting it second try. Although I don't know if he died on player 1. Looks like he does have ghost hearts.
Yeah, all that's gonna do is just extend DIMEI's lead by a tiny bit more and allow FLUP to catch up, hopefully.
Yeah, and for all of these runners, just as long as they're not too far behind, realizing that we're only in episode 2, and there can be massive swings, especially in episodes 4 and 6, where we could see this entire race flip on its head and completely go to the other side where everyone flips positions. You just never know what can happen in some of those more difficult episodes. FLUP did have a really...
DIMEI getting a really good gunship. I believe that is a 147.
That is a 147. That is really, really good. FLUP had a very interesting second barrier skip where when she called in with player 2, she was riding the collision up top. Did end up working out, but looked a little funky at first.
And
Let's see if DIMEI
approaching Dooku skip.
Yeah, let's avoid a Dooku Christmas if possible. He is good. He is clear.
TFRESH looking like he's going for the Xbox hitbox warp right there, managing to get out of bounds on the second try. Oh my god.
Wow.
I'm very surprised that worked.
Wow.
He was like so far back with player 2. I feel like he had to have walked into the transition during like the couple frames of movement you have.
Yeah, he looked pretty uncertain. But you know, everybody has a bit of a different setup that looked a little bit more like just kind of going for it. And had he been slightly off with his timing, we definitely could have seen a missed skip. Let's see if we can go 3 for 3. FLUP now approaching. Looks just like a much cleaner, safer setup from FLUP. A lot more consistent.
Yeah, so in this boss fight, during the lightning cycles, there are 2 slashes that you can do that save around like a second and a half each. I believe they're frame perfect, but if you can slash Dooku from far enough away where he doesn't end up moving after the slash, he will start the next lightning cycle right away. Don't think either DIMEI or TFRESH got either of them.
Yeah, that's one of those little time saves that it's really hard if you want to decide to go for it or not, because if you risk it too much, then you end up just not even hitting Dooku. And it's definitely a waste of time at that point. And so the window is really hard to judge with where you should be slashing Dooku, depending on where your positioning starts and when you slash and your jump and whatnot. So it's definitely easy to lose time with, but it's also just such a minor difference if you hit it or don't hit it.
Yeah, going into episode 4, this is probably something we should talk about. But right now, the matches of rung 3 and rung 5, the rungs above and below this one, have already been done. So we actually know exactly what times these runners need in order to either leapfrog a rung above or avoid getting leapfrogged from the rung below. So right now, the first place runner of this race needs to get a 229.57 or better in order to leapfrog Phantom, and that would allow them to end up in run 2 next week. And then the second place runner needs to get better than a 231.50 in order to beat Poulison's time, in order to avoid not getting leapfrogged.
Yeah, the leapfrog mechanic definitely shakes things up this year compared to last, just looking at the times. And it's something that means that no matter which rung you're in, you do have to be paying attention to those times and finishing out no matter what. So it's regardless of if you suffer time loss earlier in a run, you need to kind of lock in and just play the best you can, because it can actually have a bigger impact than it did last year, where you would just move up a rung, move down, or stay in the same rung. Given these runners' most recent PBs, hopefully we won't see a major disaster that would cause any of them to be below that 231.51 from Coulison, but you never know what might happen that could make that the case.
Did you see what happened to TFRESH? Because he definitely opened the game.
Does he not? I thought he went into secret plans.
Did he maybe go
that
into secret plans before buying EBB?
is he resetting again?
It's possible he's having like an OBS bug where the game is just not showing up, but I'm pretty sure I saw him like open the game after 2.
I personally have not seen that. It looks like the chat is saying it's been a black screen for a minute and a half now. So I assume it's just a stream thing and not that anything has actually happened.
It looks like he is entering episode 4 now.
OBS crashed, so he had to restart his stream and is only now able to enter secret plans. That is a very unfortunate time loss for TFRESH.
Yeah, that is also very unfortunate for the predictions. I know a lot of people actually ended up predicting TFRESH to win this match because of like the quick improvement he's had this last week. But yeah, that's gonna make it a lot harder for him.
Yeah, definitely. And so now what we see is actually a pretty decent gap between first, second, and third. DIMEI just having a very solid secret plans overall so far. And this is one of those levels where you're not going to see any massive swings in the actual level itself. Obviously, OBS crashing is not something that you can take into account. But we're going to see a couple minutes just between these runners now. The gap is going to expand quite a bit and make it a lot harder for TFRESH to catch up.
Yeah, it looks like DIMEI's going to be getting a pretty decent secret plans. So far, the entire level has gone well, and the start of this end room has also been pretty decent. He needs to kill this last guy behind him, otherwise he might get shot. I think he did end up killing him.
He
No,
still
actually.
hasn't, taking his time to kill Johnny,
Bro, there's another one.
and did not have Rebel Friend on screen,
Yeah, that stormtrooper must have been body blocking him.
which
Wow,
messed up his
not getting the
entire
CPS.
character management, not allowing him to do the camera pan skip. And
Yeah, what
R2 running away
what was a really good
completely.
secret plans is
Oh
now
my
just like
goodness.
a 10-15 second time loss.
I have never seen R2 run away like that.
Yeah, it must have had something to do with like the stormtroopers that were in the second room that got opened.
Yeah, I guess he just didn't realize how significant it would be leaving that one trooper alive, not letting Rebel Friend be where he typically is, where he's de-aggroed but on screen with your other players. So
Yeah,
calling in R2 just messed up the entire positioning and made the whole end room lose quite a bit of time.
yeah, FLUP taking a death in this end room, losing ghost hearts as well. I don't know how bad that is gonna be. I don't think it's gonna matter in the end, but it could have actually been disastrous.
Yeah, even just getting the two-player strats and then also getting the camera pan skip still makes up quite a bit of time compared to DIMEI.
Yeah, if you're TFRESH after taking this 2-minute time loss, this like bad secret plans from both of the runners is kind of what you want to see.
Yes, and it is notable that just when it comes to classic 1P2C in these original trilogy episodes, that TFRESH has even more experience because how much he played Lego Star Wars 2, the original trilogy. So he's used to these levels like secret plans that is just a lot of 1P2C and less about the tricks, where he's able to just play a little bit more solid.
Yeah, as you were saying how much experience he had with these levels, he did end up missing Super Crane. Not something you usually see.
Flight commentator's curse.
Yeah, we're gonna see DIMEI going for slow force here. This is another technically not a one try, but if you miss it once, you end up losing time after that. But yeah, this could end up being the difference between a really good Junland or a potential time save for FLUP and TFRESH.
Yeah, and
But
Daime is out of bounds really well. Good setup, just very consistent and clean. And the only thing that you really have to worry about at this point that people have gotten used to is just kind of the awkward camera while trying to keep Luke under the collision so that you make sure, see, falling a little bit there. It can be really easy to either pop in bounds as the camera snaps or fall out of bounds. Anything goes wrong, and you have to go for either the EJP out of bounds or the satellite dish backup, both of which lose a lot of time since you already spent a little bit of time setting up slow force.
yeah, even with with the problems on the out of bounds movement, still probably saving time to like a first try EJP out of bounds.
Yeah, and it looks like FLUP is going for the EBB strat versus the Obi-Wan slash, also getting out of bounds as Daime misses BBJ 3 times now.
Yeah, I think the Obi-Wan slash was actually a backup. Daimi tried to shoot with Luke, but ended up falling off because he went too far up.
Daime now 7 attempts deep into BBJ, getting an 8th try. Which is not what you like to see, but it will be really easy for these other runners to also take a bit of time with that trick. FLUP having a little bit of problems at the end of the slow force, but getting the actual trick very well.
Oh, I thought he got Daimi box. No. That was so close.
Yeah, not getting DIMEI box, which does lose quite a bit of time. A little unfortunate. Considering he is the founder, I would have expected that to go a little bit better. FLUP going for BBJ now.
Yeah, also having a bunch of difficulty with this trick. I don't know what happened today, but both of the runners
I think
getting
that was
like
also 8th
7th
try.
try. Yeah. This is just exactly what TFRESH needs in order to catch back up. And then speaking of TFRESH, I was talking about like the backup slash before. TFRESH actually does that as his main strategy, since he learned it while doing OT runs where you don't have exploding blaster bolts.
That makes sense.
Yeah, getting a really clean out of bounds.
Yeah, that did look pretty fast with the setup. I think DIMEI took a death on Quicksand 1, not going for Bone Bridge skip. He still just has a very solid lead.
Yeah, really clean slow force by TFRESH other than taking that death right as he collected the red brick with Luke.
Yeah, very good overall.
And then,
DIMEI did not go for David line, but got Quicksand 2 very cleanly.
well, that's a very interesting setup for the speeder clip. Usually most people like fully turn the speeder 180 degrees and then go back so they have time to line it up. Oh, I thought
Oh,
TFRESH
I thought that
first
was
try
first
BBJ.
try. Yeah. FLUP going for Bone Bridge. Gets it, first try. And TFRESH is not capitalizing on the BBJ mistakes from the other runners. And actually, those attempts were costing a little bit more time. A lot of FLUP's fails, she was just hitting her head. Whereas TFRESH was actually jumping up, just not high enough to slam into the Sandcrawler. So I don't think that there was any time save whatsoever, even though he got it 5th or 6th try.
Yeah, all three of these runners getting slow force, but not looking like a great Junlin from any of them.
No, and if we look at the actual times, I mean, that's a 524 from DIMEI. A lot of that can be attributed to BBJ, but that's not what you're looking for at this level. And a slightly
TFRESH,
better 518 from FLUP.
yeah, TFRESH getting zapped by one of the Jawas. He entered the room a little bit early and then just didn't do enough shots or wasn't directing them in order to kill them. So he just got zapped with R2.
DIMEI setting up Fryskip, having a bit of trouble with character management in this first room. We do have 3PO walking off to infinity, so the setup is good, but definitely losing some time just due to these characters and also the speeder clip causing some issues. It looks like he's going just a little bit too fast with his turns. Does make it out, but that's quite a bit of time loss just in room 1. I don't know how much experience, I mean, you've been doing fry skip laser, so how hard is it once you get the setup in room 1 to just make sure that you're optimal setting up for speeder clip?
So there's a couple of setups in room 1. I think FLUP just not even going for the room 1 setup, doing the pre-cantina one instead.
She tried to, but it just didn't work out, so she ended up giving up and just going straight for speeder clip.
Yeah, this pre-cantina setup, I think it only loses like a second now to the fastest room 1. But the problem with room 1 is if you end up doing it like slightly too late, you can actually just have your player 2 auto dropout on R2, or no, your player 1 auto dropout on R2 instead of Luke, and that makes it a lot more difficult to actually get the speeder, since you're gonna have the AI character controlling the speeder, and you need to switch to the speeder. And you can't actually do that unless you're facing directly towards Luke. But yeah, FLUP having a lot of trouble with
Yeah,
this pre-cantina setup.
I've never seen that, but as soon as she got the oh, and not character managing correctly, going to have to force 3PO and needs to still move C3PO onto the button. 3PO still not there. R2 hogging that button. But I've never seen in the pre-cantina setup where as soon as you get the player 3 glitch, that player 3 can actually walk back into the previous room if you're not careful where you do the setup. So having
Yeah.
to reload the room as well and then having button issues, opening a massive door for TFRESH.
Yeah, TFRESH getting the room 1, and then you saw he had R2 player 1, but instead of swapping, he did the backup where you instantly drop out player 1 and then call back in, and since the speeder's on screen, it'll call in player 1 as Luke. So
Yeah,
saving some time to DIMEI and definitely saving time to FLUP.
yeah, he also had a very fast issue here, but does get through. And I didn't even see the end of DIMEI's spaceport, but just based on his time, I'm going to assume that his fry skip was successful. TFRESH doing the correct character management, except for some weird just two-player issues here. Seems a little shaky with who he should be swapping to. I think he was trying to get Obi-Wan to force push R2 into the cantina. FLUP also had a successful fry skip.
Yeah, having trouble with the actual player 3 glitch aspect of it, but a successful remote yoink from FLUP.
Yeah, and looking at the time difference, we are at a 48-second lead for DIMEI. I honestly thought that it was going to be a little bit larger than that, but when you take into account the penalty, it's actually not that much. Just under a minute is a bit surprising. DIMEI misses the out of bounds twice, while TFRESH should hopefully be hitting a successful fry skip and does get it, making up quite a bit of time overall in this.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if the difference between FLUP and TFRESH was like less than a minute and a half now.
Yeah, we'll have to see with this TFRESH exit. DIMEI getting a great tractor beam grab. See if he goes for the backup shot or if he just feels confident he's fast enough. He is just going for it. And if you do that out of bounds quick enough, usually it's more likely that Obi-Wan shows up, and he does. Which is just a little risky, but it paid off for DIMEI.
Yeah, definitely getting a faster Obi-Wan spawn than like the fastest one you can get with breaking the barrel. So it definitely did pay off for him. And also
Yeah,
getting no aggro's in this room.
yeah, FLUP doing Han out of bounds. Getting it, but not first try. Definitely not saving any time with it. It's a very minimal difference between that and the standard Obi-Wan out of bounds. And it does look like the gap between TFRESH and FLUP is right at about 45 seconds.
Oh wow, TFRESH must have like had his timer
Oh my
paused
goodness,
for a
did
while
you see
when he was
that from
restarting.
FLUP?
Yeah, that was really quick, and it was like from the bottom instead of from the side.
That almost was just like a YOLO, just jumping for the collision. Didn't even seem like a setup. And just was able to get into the pipe collision and hit it. Went for the backup shot fast. I mean, even with the backup shot, I would argue that like FLUP did this just as fast as DIMEI did.
Yeah, usually you expect to spend a little bit more time trying to get the backup shot, especially if there's like troopers behind that can cause you to like auto dodge. But FLUP getting the backup shot instantly.
Yeah, very,
Getting
very
an
solid.
aggro. Oh my gosh.
Nice
Losing the
dodges.
helmet here, so she will have to pick up one in this room. But does not have to go all the way back to the start of that room.
Yeah,
Very
avoiding
fortunate.
disaster, that would have put FLUP a lot closer to TFRESH, who is coming up on the helmet dispenser now after doing the backup shot. So FLUP just losing minimal time could have been a disaster.
Up on
And
one heart with Han, though, who has the helmet. If she gets shot once, this could be disaster.
oh, a heart drop. Great heart drop for FLUP. Not that it was necessary, but under different circumstances, you don't get that heart drop and then you get shot. Again, that can cause some massive time loss.
And then if we take a look at DIMEI's screen right now, he's going to be going for trash skip. TFRESH also getting an aggro in that room, but since he had the helmet on player 2, they just completely ignored Chewie.
Yeah, he didn't even try to block player 2 at all. He just kept moving along, did the panel, and it's worked out just fine for him. Which is going to make up just a tiny bit of time to FLUP. Although I wouldn't be surprised if they have pretty similar princesses overall, just given how fast FLUP got Tractor Beam. FLUP did have a bit of issues with the out of bounds at the start, so it's probably pretty close. DIMEI now in the second part of Trash Skip. Let's see if he can hit the transition properly. And that is just great execution overall for DIMEI. Let's hope
For
we
the
see.
Han out of bounds at the start of Princess, I'm pretty sure it only saves time if you get like a YOLO roll out of the transition load. And since FLUP missed it there, it just does not even save time at that point.
Let's
The
hope.
lead between FLUP and TFRESH is only 27 seconds at this point.
Yeah, it's very, very close, and Trash Skip could be a deciding factor here. FLUP has been doing this new trash setup since around BTR last year. And so that's been quite a few months, almost a year now, of doing this setup. And TFRESH, who is only just recently derusted, has only now just started getting used to these tricks a little bit more. So even though he's a very experienced runner, he is not as experienced with these newer setups.
Oh, FLUP getting shot. I think getting shot actually screwed her over. Because her lineup looked good, and then she got shot back, which probably cost her like 20 seconds.
I'm pretty sure the timing on this, from what I've heard, is that if you know that you're not going to make it and you go back and fall and come back to try again to hit the transition, it basically evens out from doing trash skip. So it's not a major time loss compared to not doing trash skip, but if both of the other runners are able to hit it, TFRESH would make up a lot of ground here. TFRESH jumping immediately into the transition. Very quick trash skip from him overall.
And we completely just like missed DIMEI's entire DSC, but he did get Ritmore first try. And this is really good.
He did. This is a very good DSC. A 358 DSC from DIMEI. FLUP also getting Ritmore. TFRESH not too far behind. FLUP does have the helmet, so that is very good for her to avoid that.
Yeah, if the rest of this DSC is as clean as Room 1 was for TFRESH, then, oh, I spoke too soon. But I was going to say,
Yeah.
TFRESH could almost be even with FLUP.
Oh, and
At
TFRESH almost dying on that next attempt. He just was a little bit later than usual for setting up Ritmore. I'm surprised he didn't just get crushed in the wall.
Yeah, luckily the way he missed Ritmore the first time was going too late, so he didn't lose his helmet. So he's only going to be losing like 5 seconds or so.
Yeah, it's just one rotation of that platform for Ripmore skip, but that could have been a lot worse for TFRESH. Definitely still saving time to FLUP just because of trash skip, but he's not capitalizing as much on the time loss. And DIMEI is just continuing to cruise through and maintain his lead, just playing very solid overall.
Yeah, as long as we don't see any major disaster in Rebel, people who predicted DIMEI in this channel point prediction should be very happy.
Yeah, and luckily Rebel Attack is just one of those levels where you don't really expect anything crazy to happen. I mean, his players were just disconnected there, so maybe you could have seen an auto dropout hard lock or something like that. It's possible. I also don't think he's
Oh,
blown
he
up the last.
blanked. Wow.
I
He
was
shot that twice, and it
Yeah,
blanked both times.
yeah, I did not think that he had shot that. Of course, the other thing that can happen is you miss a target like that, but you move forward in the room and you have to backtrack really far to pick up torpedoes or to hit a target you missed. Things can
Another
happen.
potential thing that just happened is he was on 1 heart with player
Another
2,
blank.
and he lost a torpedo. He has 0 torpedoes entering this last set of targets.
And at least he was playing it safe enough to know that he had to ensure those were hit, so he doesn't have to worry about that moving forward. No backtracking or anything, but still some time loss here where you wouldn't really expect it. Looks like FLUP getting a 414 DSE and TFRESH with a 408. So
Dami
only,
missing the room 3 out of bounds. He entered the room with both players called in since player 2 had the power up, and that must have like messed up his camera slightly.
yeah, really interesting built up time loss from DIMEI. It's not going to make a difference in the episode 4 exit, but is opening the door just for the race overall to allow TFRESH and FLUP to make up like 10 or 15 seconds at least.
I would say even more. Honestly, he has had a really bad rebel attack so far. I think
Yeah, we'll
missing
have
the
to
out
look
of
at the
bounds
time.
loses like 8 seconds by itself. And he blanked in room 1. He lost torpedoes in room 2. Like, it just was not good in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I'll be very curious to see what these rebel attack times are, because currently DIMEI holds like a minute 15 lead over FLUP, leaving DSE. So we'll have to see what that shrinks down to. And it has to be maybe a little scary for DIMEI considering we're coming up on Jabba's Palace, where FLUP is actually the CG holder because she goes for crazy strats that nobody else goes for right now. But FLUP also having a moment with the out of bounds. Not re-hitting the transition, but then does. Actually giving an opportunity to TFRESH to make up some time. And again, TFRESH's experience with the original trilogy is going to help him here. Just having a very standard time with the torpedoes and the targets, and if he can get this out of bounds, he will save quite a bit of time to both of the runners. And he's just going to go for the classic setup.
Yeah, a trend I've noticed a lot during this ladder league is a lot of the runners have been like attempting the faster version of this room 3 out of bounds and then missing it and then instantly going back to the slightly slower and consistent setup. But yeah, 503 rebel attack from DIMEI. That is not what you would like to see. Unless
Yeah,
you're TFRESH or FLUP. That, I guess, in that case, that's exactly what you'd like to see.
yeah, definitely. It is notable that DIMEI already, his best possible time is only 15 seconds away from his PB. So if we take into account the penalty as well, this is basically where he would have been at like going into Bespin for his PB. So he definitely has experienced quite a bit of time loss so far this run.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting because if they like all of the runners continue playing and losing like this much time to their golds in the back half of the run, they might not even be able to leapfrog. Because remember, we need a essentially a sub 230 from the first place runner of this race in order to leapfrog.
Yeah, that is what is necessary. It definitely is on the table for any of these runners, but it's looking a bit tough. It is interesting that TFRESH's sum of best is almost 2 minutes slower than the other two runners. So even though everyone is losing about 4 minutes to their sum of best at this point, if that trend continues, it could be looking really rough for somebody like TFRESH.
Speaking of TFRESH, I have just been told that since he had like the OBS crash in 4-1, at the end of the race, 1 minute and 45 seconds will be manually subtracted from his final time. So if we account for that right
Wow.
now, he is in the lead by 30 seconds.
He is ahead. And I agree with that decision personally. I think, something out of the runner's control, taking that into account for the race's sake, does make sense just to even the playing field. And with that being said, that changes things significantly. Um, I don't know if we've paid out the episode 4 prediction, but I don't know if that needs to be taken into account, since technically TFRESH would be in the lead for that as well.
Yeah, I think DIMEI might have actually thrown that prediction because he definitely lost. Um, I mean, the lead right now for TFRESH would be like exactly 40 seconds if you count the penalties. And with a 5:03, uh, actually, I don't think it would have mattered. I don't think getting a 4:23 rebel attack would have been very difficult for DIMEI. So I don't think it actually mattered in the end. But yeah, TFRESH is gonna take that prediction.
Yeah. And TFRESH did have a really solid Rebel attack overall, getting a 435, which in comparison to DIMEI not even getting a sub 5 is quite a bit of time saved. Even if we weren't taking into account that OBS crash, TFRESH did make up all of that time on FLUP and get closer to DIMEI. I think we'd have a close race either way, but now it just seems like TFRESH has kind of run away with it at this point. I mean, it's still very close, of course, but it's kind of flipped on its head after this episode 4. I think we might need a refresh on FLUP's stream. Hopefully not an OBS crash on her end.
Okay, I think it was just like the common problem with the new OBS version of the game not showing up for like the first minute. But we're gonna see Sentry Jump from FLUP here. Oh, she gets like a little bit of a jump, but then it gets eaten. So
Yeah, very
unfortunately
unfortunate.
not getting it. I think this trick saves just under 5 seconds, but missing it loses a lot more since you need to destroy the other two turrets before you can build the platform.
Yeah. DIMEI coming up on Spiderless here. Very significant trick. We will have to pay attention to how many attempts it takes him. Going for a very fast setup. I think he was too far to the right there because he popped upwards, too far to the left on his second attempt. He's going for just very quick attempts. It's easy to sink time loss, probably more advantageous to just take a little bit of time with the setup. Does get it, I believe, fourth or fifth try.
FLUP going for Spiderful right here, not getting like the best spider spawn,
Yeah, a
but
little
not too
unfortunate.
bad, I don't think. Actually, I might be lying. I think that's like the second worst spawn you can get.
Does get the out of bounds. She's very experienced, so that's not surprising whatsoever.
And then instead of going for Parker Balance Beam here, which is a ridiculously difficult series of jumps, she is going to pop back inbounds here and go for one player droid avoid.
It looks like a
Getting it.
really easy trick overall, like just standing in one spot and forcing like you usually do, and it kind of just like pushes you to where you need to be.
Oh
Oh
my gosh, I thought
my
she just
goodness.
died.
I thought she either died or was gonna pop back inbounds. I saw the lightsaber peeking out of the floor for a second there.
Yeah, that could have been really bad, and even worse if she actually did end up going for Parker Balance Beam. She would have got like a respawn all the way at the start of the room.
FLUP and TFRESH on Spiderless. TFRESH getting it, FLUP taking a few tries. Visually, both runners very, very close doing this out of bounds.
No.
But FLUP pops back in bounds. That's one of the risks of doing the auto dropout, is that your camera is just a little bit different and you're worrying about multiple players. That's one of the things that can happen. And gets it again very quickly, but it's just going to push FLUP even further back into last place.
She's really low. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that is not the Jabas you want to see from FLUP,
Yeah, not what you
especially
would
since how
expect.
good she is at the level.
Yeah, really not what I was expecting from that level. But all of the runners had their little bit of moments. I actually think that TFRESH probably had the best one overall just because of how fast his Spiderless was. Looks like DIMEI got a 6:17. We'll have to look for these other two runners.
But yeah, we have DIMEI entering Carcoon. I think he's going to be going for the Chewy strat for this Boba fight, where you cross over the bridge with player 2, who doesn't activate the fight, and he's going to position Chewbacca right where Boba spawns and slap him 3 times. Perfectly done.
Very well done. It's actually really easy to only get a couple of hits in, just depending on the positioning and if you get pushed by Boba Fett. So getting 3 in and then ending the fight immediately after is ideal for this strat. So just very well done. Good start to Carcoon for DIMEI. Obviously, for Carcoon, the biggest thing we're going to be looking out for is Disco Skip.
Yeah, compared to last Ladder League, Disco Skip has been much less of a problem, especially because of the Pixel Disco setup found by Corrin Harasmi after last year's Ladder League actually ended. It has made the trick. It's actually consistent now. However, it does take quite a bit of time to set up most of the time, since you need to position Chewbacca at a very certain pixel.
Just looking at the Jabba's times, so DIMEI got a 6:17. FLUP actually had the worst Jabba's of the 3 with a 6:40, just because of the really unfortunate time loss during Spiderless. DIMEI going for Pixel Disco. Looks confident, and he gets it. That was a very fast setup and execution. Probably knows that lineup very well.
Yeah, another thing with Pixel Disco is, since you're clipping out player 2, you can now keep both players in for the end platform, and it makes it a couple seconds faster. We're going to see FLUP here going for the camera pan skip version of this Boba fight. It is quite a bit faster, since you can actually shoot all of these enemies and Boba during the time where you would normally be waiting.
Yeah, and gets it very fast, just with Han clearing out all the enemies, and with just killing Boba. Just very well done overall.
Oh, and I didn't even realize this, but DIMEI getting Ghost Hearts on Chewbacca. That just makes the end platform so much easier for him.
Yeah, I think that actually happened right after the Boba fight.
Yeah, it would have happened as he called back in for topless, or like to pull the levers for topless, I think.
Yeah, that would make sense. FLUP missing topless a couple of times. It's a third try. You can now see TFRESH coming up on Disco Skip. Just
Wow.
going for it, but able to hit the setup. I mean, he probably was just holding down special and then trying to get the lineup as fast as possible, and that ended up paying off. Worked out well. He was able to do it quick enough. But just like felt like a show of confidence from TFRESH that he knows what he's doing. FLUP already like taking 3 to 5 seconds just to look visually at the setup before finishing the build. Still gets it first try, but there's a slight difference in how these runners decided to handle it.
Yeah, that cartoon was actually very good by DIMEI. He's getting a 42.
It's very, very good.
Ooh, FLUP actually killing too many enemies, and now she's gonna have the Gamorrean guard spawn in. Hopefully they don't target Chewie. I see one chasing him right now.
And she did not push the right box far enough in. I'm sure she'll notice it at some point. Having to adapt strats just a little bit there with the 1P2C. And DIMEI has just been cruising through speeder at this point. Well, not cruising through because he skipped the speeder section, but playing very, very fast so far. And now, even if you take into account the OBS crash and you don't deduct any time, TFRESH is less than a minute behind DIMEI. Purely just from playing a lot better through episode 4 and episode 6 so far.
It's not even like DIMEI had a bad start of 6 either. Like 6:17 Jabba's isn't too big of a time loss, but he got a really good cartoon. I think TFRESH actually ending up with the exact same cartoon. Or no, 10 seconds slower, sorry. No, I was looking at the wrong split. It was a 42. So yeah, TFRESH and DIMEI getting the exact same cartoons.
TFRESH going for speeder skip. Took a little bit of time hitting the transition, but just playing it safe. Very good overall. Looks like he might be going for the transition hit with Leia rather than Luke. He was doing some damage boosts. Very unusual strategy there, but does work out.
Ooh, I don't know if that's enough height. It is. FLUP getting over very quickly. I
Really
was
weird
kind of
angle.
shocked that was
Yeah.
enough height from the speeder, but manages to get over. But yeah, now DIMEI entering Endor. This is definitely a level where some things can change for between these three runners. I know all three of these runners have learned 12 button skip and have been doing them in runs, but TFRESH may be a little bit less experienced with the trick than FLUP or DIMEI. So we'll see if he's able to get it quickly and manage to save time or break even with them.
Yeah, one of the ways that you can tell just how comfortable these players will be with the strategy is how much they decide to implement 1P2C into it. I know when I first started with the trick, I would go one player at a time. I would fully pick up my controller to do it with Han and then do it with player 2. And once I got a little bit more comfortable, I was able to just do it with a 1P2C grip on each of my respective controllers. So it'll be interesting to see if that differs for any of these runners. I know some people like to drop out player 2 to do player 1 over the first barrier and then do the second player just to not have to deal with any enemies or any deaths or anything like that. So it'll be interesting to see what we see even just between the runner strategies to kind of get an idea just how comfortable they are with the strat. I also am unsure how many hill rolls we're going to see. I actually prefer just doing the mini launch compared to hill roll, which loses a little bit of time, but it's completely consistent. Like DIMEI already missing hill roll, getting it second try. You can do a similar launch with Han and Leia like you do for the second gate skip up here that allows you to boost Han Solo up instead of doing hill roll, which I actually found to be a little bit of an annoying strategy when I first started out. DIMEI, first try with the first gate skip. Very
Wow.
clean.
What an impressive 12 button skip from DIMEI there. He didn't slow down with player 2 at all through the entire trick. But yeah, that is going to be saving a ton of time to not doing it.
Yeah, we actually should just be watching for DIMEI's Endor time overall, because I think as long as he wraps this up with a solid bunker, he's going to be putting up a very strong time that no matter who you are will be incredibly hard to compete with in a race setting. We saw an interesting out of bounds strat, or not out of bounds strat, but a different line where you go behind the huts as R2 for FLUP. Do you remember what that trick is called?
I'm pretty sure it is EJP line because that's something EJP found, and it is actually like very, very slightly faster because it is a better line. But yeah. Ooh, DIMEI blowing up 3PO and taking a death with Leia. So
Yeah,
having a bit
slightly.
of trouble with this last button.
Yeah, and TFRESH did go for the alternate hill roll strategy, just pushing Han up with Leia. Oh, but falls off on the gear, which is the hardest part of this trick, in my opinion, is the gear collision is really difficult. Still very quick overall.
Oh, he
Not
turned
great
in
height.
slightly too early. He could have got it with that height, but he turned in early. Again, that was
Again, yeah.
just enough height. This is exactly what we were talking about with just slightly less experience with the trick.
Yeah, because
Like
all of
he's getting
these
the right height, but he's turning in too
all
early on
work.
all of these. Again.
While we're saying this, FLUP with a cracked first gate skip with both players. Not a great setup for second gate skip. So not able to capitalize on TFRESH's time loss. Probably a little faster overall, but not by much. And definitely we're going to see DIMEI saving a lot of time in this Endor.
Yeah, DIMEI just not going for that camera pan skip since he had both Chewie and Leia up the elevator already. And if you have to do the camera pan skip with Wicket, it's basically slow at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah, DIMEI getting a 6-10 Endor. Very, very cool.
Yeah, even with those little things that happened in the bunker, still a great time.
Yeah, and I don't think FLUP or TFRESH are going to get anywhere close to that Endor. So DIMEI might actually be almost in the lead at this point because TFRESH lost a lot of time on a 12 button skip.
He did. I mean, I would be surprised if these other runners, they might not even get sub 7s at this point. just between minimal time loss and then with what happened during 12 button skip, it's not obvious that these aren't going to be above 7-minute endors, which would allow DIMEI to become a lot closer to TFRESH.
Yeah, we were talking about like the episode 6 start that DIMEI and TFRESH had, but this is shaping up to be a really clean episode 6 for DIMEI. He had a bit of a time loss in Jabba's, and then not the greatest speeder showdown, but this Endor is really sealing the deal.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially compared to the episode 4 where like we saw a surprising amount of time loss in like Rebel attack. This episode 6, he's locked in a lot compared to the episode 4. Let's see this ultra kill for DIMEI.
No!
No,
That is actually so
unfortunate.
unlucky. Why did he turn around?
The Emperor doing the backstab on Vader, which means that when you hit him, it will give him a heart of damage rather than the Emperor just doing a block. Does get it the second time around pretty fast with one safety slash, but still very unfortunate. Not what you would like to see if he wants to capitalize on this time save that he's been having these last few levels.
Yeah, I honestly could not tell you what he even did wrong on that first attempt. It seemed like the Emperor just did a backslash for no reason at all.
It does look like FLUP actually had a lot better of an Endor than I would have thought. That is a 623. Solely based on 12 button skip, the second gate skip taking a few tries. I would not have thought it was that fast, but must have just
Yeah,
been cranking the rest of the level.
I think the back half of the level must have been quite a bit cleaner than DIMEI's. Because DIMEI played the first couple of rooms, like up to 12 button skip, very, very clean. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if that was only like a second or so off of the community gold up to after 12 button skip. But yeah, with that missed ultra kill, I honestly think that TFRESH might take the lead here. Since the lead out of Endor, if we account for the penalties, DIMEI is getting a 131.48 exit, and TFRESH is getting a 40, I think. Yeah, 131.40. So TFRESH. Wait, am I doing the math right? I might need a calc for this.
I believe that's correct. That sounds correct, just from looking at it roughly. Basically, taking into account that TFRESH should have a minute 40 subtracted, around a minute 40 subtracted from his time because of the OBS crash and then a 3-second penalty that happened at the start of the race.
Yeah, so I think TFRESH was actually in the lead out of Endor, if we account for all the penalties and the time he's making back from the OBS crash.
Yeah, but it definitely is a lot closer than it was, even just out of like Carcoon and Speeder Showdown, where we were still looking at like a 45-second to a 1-minute lead for TFRESH. And now he just very clearly is in the lead. Looking at almost, I want to say it's about 30 seconds now if you take everything into account. Which does mean that FLUP is almost 2 minutes behind DIMEI and TFRESH.
Yeah, I'm not sure how good DIMEI's opening for this level actually was, but so far the interior has gone pretty decent.
I think it was really good. I saw quite a few torpedoes on his screen as he was heading to the third and fourth Star Destroyers. I think he had just an excess of torpedoes. So I think he had a really good Room 1 when it comes to RNG. For getting the TIE bombers,
Yeah, if you
um,
can get a good core, this is still gonna be a pretty solid episode 6, even though he had like 20-second time loss in the Palpatine fight.
yeah, and playing it very safe, making sure that both targets are destroyed for IT. I like that play in a race setting. It doesn't cost you a lot of time to play
He
safe.
doesn't even shoot the torpedo.
That
I'm
is
surprised on that.
very surprising. And also dropping out. I don't understand the rationale of doing this one player. This last section is essentially just 3 rooms of auto-scroller. Seems a bit like a waste of a controller dropout when you're going to reset the game after this episode anyway.
Yeah, he's also gonna have to do like the menuing after the level on keyboard, which is normally not what people do.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I've ever seen this before, but it's an interesting little strat that I don't even really understand the reason why he would. So I do think it's notable, just as we're finishing up episode 6, to look at the best possible time for our runners. DIMEI is rocking a low 225 right now, which will probably go up a little bit to like a mid 225 after this ITDS exit. That was a gold?
Lit actually.
He must have had a fantastic Room 1 then. Better than even I thought from the small glimpse that I had of that. I assumed with the slower core strats that he would not be golding, but that was, I mean, good on him for that. So he has a 225.03 best possible time. FLUP with a low 226, and then TFRESH, if you take everything into account, basically tied with DIMEI's best possible time, also a low 225 going into episode 3. So not only a very close race, but also with 2 episodes to go, we could definitely see a couple of 227s or 228s put up this run if things continue to go well, which is crazy because when we were leaving episode 4, I mean, we were already seeing like 4 minutes of time lost to Sobs. I'm pretty sure episode 6 only saw like 30 to.
Yeah, I think his Saab or his best possible time out of episode 4 was like a 224 3x. So he only lost like 30 seconds to some of best, including the chance or not chance the Emperor Palpatine fight.
Yeah, with the Palpatine fight, but a great Endor and then golding ITDS, this ended up being a phenomenal episode 6 for DIMEI. So I definitely think that for all runners, we have leapfrog potential. I'm not sure where we're at with chat predictions, but at some point, I would love to see a prediction for how many I don't even know what the line would be at this point. These runs are going too well. I would have said how many sub 230s there are going to be. But at this point, I feel like that's on the table for all of these runners. Looks like TFRESH did not have a great ITDS, losing quite a bit in his best possible time. Looking now at more of a mid 225 best possible time.
Yeah, we'll see how these like last two episodes go for these runners, because usually episode 3 is known for having like some levels where you can play closer to sub, but then also levels like Chancellor and Grievous, where Chancellor is a very difficult level where you can end up losing a lot of time extremely easily, and then Grievous, which is not fully in your control.
And we've definitely seen variance in Grievous. And then also for Chancellor, we have seen, I think it was Charizite struggling quite a bit in Chancellor with CSJ. And those are just some of those tricks where, like, you could spend a lot of time on them, but then in a race setting, if you're in the wrong position, you don't set the right spawn point, you force at the wrong time, something minor can happen and really throw you off and cause quite a bit of time loss.
Yeah, as someone who did not have the best Chancellor of all time in my last Ladder League match, I can definitely say it is not an easy level to play well.
Yeah, it's probably the most difficult level in this episode to play well, just in comparison to, like, if done completely optimally, where you do all the tricks and execute them at a high enough level. Also, DIMEI, 1 heart with player 2, but does get a couple.
It should be good now. Usually you don't expect to lose like more than 2 hearts on player 2 in this last section. Losing 1 there. Usually you don't lose it this early though. Should be good, hopefully.
And you can get just randomly shot off screen, but he is fine. But yeah, like I was saying, Chancellor is definitely the hardest, has the hardest tricks, and just mechanically is the most difficult to play at a high level every single time in this episode. I would say Kashyyyk is up there as well, but that's less because of tricks and more just execution of the 1P2C. Doing everything optimally is difficult. DIMEI going for GDS.
Don't think that was an attempt since he dropped out on player 2.
Oh, he was dropped out. I just saw the jump slash and then the pause menuing.
Yeah,
Looked like it for a
typically
second.
that's kind of what it looks like, but he paused on player 2 to drop out to get the like Anakin warp after the camera pan.
Yeah, it looks like he didn't even get the warp with Anakin, but still a little bit safer than trying to do a frame perfect pause. I do think we will see FLUP going for it. FLUP was actually one of, if not the first person to do it in a run. The trick was found, and then she practiced it and hit it during BTR last year when nobody else had really even started implementing it. So I'm pretty sure she was the first person to do it in a run setting.
Yeah, I don't think we're gonna see an MVE from DIMEI here. MVE, for those who don't know, is a drop and warp you can do in the next room, and then you can jump out of bounds to instantly hit the transition for the next room, and it saves a couple of seconds. But given the player 2 swapped R2, I do not think he's attempting it. Taking a death from the Droidica, though, that is unlucky.
Really unfortunate death there. Even if he could have just had a better spawn point where R2 was still coming up top, that would have helped a lot. But instead, getting a lower respawn, still having to wait a little bit for R2 definitely caused some time loss.
And then we're gonna see a left side CSJ from DIMEI here. There's two, like, you can do this trick on both the left and the right side, but I think most people think the super jump on the left side is easier, but the movement to actually get up on the right side is
Oh,
the better
unfortunate.
part. Yeah, I don't think I've actually seen very many people doing the pause buffers on the left side.
I haven't either, and it might just be he's wanting to play it a little safe just in a race setting. But even with the pause buffer still missing it the first time, a little finicky with the positioning, has to loop like 4 times. Does get up there though.
Yeah, definitely playing it safe. I think he could have done one less um like spin to gain height and just flown to pop in bounds, but
I think so.
definitely trying to play safe.
FLUP going for GDS. Is she even far enough? She was, but just barely. So didn't think she was going to hit the transition, so stopped the pause buffering. Unfortunately, no GDS for us this race.
TFRESH having a lot of trouble with this pipe jump. I think he missed it like 4 times.
Yeah, that's just one of those little things that you just don't want to see, those 5 to 10-second mistakes where you're just taking a death and then messing up platforming. FLUP having the same issue but getting a better respawn, so not losing too much time.
Yeah, TFRESH also deactivating both of the security droids in this room, so having to manually attack them.
Kills Obi-Wan under the door, I think? Crushed Obi-Wan. So a little just minor thing, but something that I don't think I've ever seen before. But a lot cleaner at the top of elevator room compared to DIMEI.
And then DIMEI finishing up Chancellor. I can't tell if he's on 800 by 600. Doesn't look like it. But he might alt-tab in the opening cutscene.
Yeah, I don't believe he is yet. TFRESH is going for CSJ. No pause buffer. Left side gets it. Plays it very safe with the collision.
And he also went for the player 1 controller auto dropout. One of the benefits of him playing double controller in this section here is he needs to call back in on keyboard anyways. So he does that call in the elevator drop and warp on player 1 keyboard, which allows him to do the double controller auto dropout.
FLUP also getting CSJ as DIMEI goes for Grievous. We're gonna start off with a 4 cycle.
4 cycle, wow.
Wow. It looked really good from the setup. Another
4 cycle. This is shaping up to be a very good Grievous. Okay, he was on 800 by 600.
That is like a perfect Grievous in a race setting or in any run setting. You could not
really
ask for better.
Can't ask for better.
We are looking at, is that really a 112 still?
Yeah, I think he lost some time because he switched, or like most people nowadays, they queue 800 by 600 right outside this door where FLUP is right now, and then they alt tab during the midtro, and then they queue 1920 by 1080 in this end room, so you don't actually end up doing any menuing in Grievous.
That's just one of those decisions where, you know, depending on if you're going for a faster Chancellor time or a faster Grievous time, you got to sacrifice it somewhere. So DIMEI actually losing just a tiny bit because of how he chooses to do the menuing, even though he had a perfect Grievous. And FLUP actually changing, I think, to 40 hertz, potentially?
I think it was 48 hertz.
48 specifically, but queued 60. So this might be what she does instead, just a better setup that she's found for Grievous, because it's a little different on each person's computer. DIMEI's game looks a little funny still.
He still hasn't paused. Should be fixed now on that dropout. But he did not pause the game until, or from before, when he queued 1920 by 1080, which puts the game in widescreen for a little bit.
That was the weirdest 4 cycle I think I've ever seen from TFRESH. into a 3-cycle and is going to close this out with another 3-cycle. 4-3-3. Pretty incredible.
Early,
And
we
got
see identical Grievuses from everyone.
got a 110, so 2 seconds faster than DIMEI. FLUP going right into it.
Just
Gets
two
a
hearts here.
2-cycle.
Ooh,
Falls
and the death
off
is
as
unfortunate.
Obi-Wan. Gonna take longer for Grievous to follow her back over. Followed it up with a 3-cycle. Followed with a 4.
Yeah, that 4-cycle was extremely clutch since she did not need to go back and do another set of shots. So
And
not the worst Grievous from FLUP, but
a
definitely not
118.
on the same level as DIMEI and TFRESH.
Yeah, but still 8 seconds of variance when you had such good Grievuses from DIMEI and TFRESH. I mean, you could have just seen such a bigger swing the other way that I feel like you have to be happy with that.
We have just DIMEI strolling through the last room of Kashyyyk. He lost a little bit of time in room 1, mainly on freeing the second, or like freeing the first and second Wookiees. He like blew himself up while shooting the first one, and then also on the second one. So, having the best Kashyyyk of all time, but don't think it's gonna be too big of a consequence for him.
Yeah, taking a death on the final forcible objects also forced one of the clones. So that definitely was a little bit of time loss. Getting a 409, which again, not terrible, but not what you're looking for when TFRESH has definitely maintained a little bit of a lead. You kind of need to lock it in and just play a little bit better if you want to remain competitive.
Yeah, looking at the Grievous exits, it looks like TFRESH has about a 20-second lead or so.
Yeah, it definitely is very close. Leaving Grievous. And I think we won't see too much variance from Kashyyyk, but obviously Ruin can cause a little bit of issues with library skip. Then again, all of these runners are at the point where they should know the movement and the setup to not mess anything up, to make sure that you are in a good position, that you're panning correctly, you call in at the right time. Library skip can be finicky, but it can also be very, very consistent if you know what you're doing and you're confident in it. So I don't think we'll see too much, but we will have to be watching out.
Yeah, the only reason runners should be really missing library skip at this point is if they take like a really bad line after killing all the clones. Like, as long as you do the same thing every time and call in properly, there's no reason why it shouldn't work.
Yeah, DIMEI having a bit of trouble killing all of the clones,
This camera is kind of what I'm talking about. It should still be good with DIMEI.
and he's
Didn't like
also
veer overly to the left, but
he was double jumping with Yoda, and
dropping out the wrong player. He did not do a double swap.
yeah, I don't know, he can't camera pan. He's just waiting.
Yeah, he does a double swap after killing all the guys, but I guess he just forgot.
Yeah, still
Still
gets
working,
it,
yeah.
but losing a few seconds just to not really feeling comfortable with how he usually plays it. I mean, that could be chalked down to nerves or just forgetting a little bit. You never know. I mean, still getting library skip first try, but definitely a little bit unfortunate to get it first try, but then still have time loss just from forgetting such a minor little piece of it.
Yeah, TFRESH also saving about 5 seconds to the Kashyyyk that DIMEI got, so just further extending his lead.
Yeah, so if TFRESH can pull out a first try library skip without some of those little time losses, I mean, we could see this be like over half a minute at this point. He is going for the red staircase jump and is able to get it. He was a little slow on the setup, but still probably saved a tiny bit with it. DIMEI's going for the Vader warp in room 1 in a bit of a weird position with player 2. Doesn't even seem like it saved that much time considering you have to set it up, but is able to get it.
Not sure if you saw, but TFRESH, as he was trying to force like the first wheel, had Yoda put his lightsaber away, so he was unable to target it. So he had to kind of force confuse some of the clones. So losing a bit of time in that room to DIMEI, but hopefully he can make it back here.
Yeah, he didn't go quite far enough before backtracking to kill the clones. They were a little all over the place. Setup for library
first try though.
Pretty good on the force, so definitely going to make up a little bit of time. We'll have to see what that actually is. DIMEI had a 2:32 and TFRESH with a 2:23. So almost 10 seconds that TFRESH just furthered his lead there. FLUP with a pretty solid clone kill. A weird line, but does get it. DIMEI, his player 2 looks like he took a long time to show up to the end platform. Which is a very weird time loss. I just don't know. I don't think he positioned himself correctly.
I think DIMEI actually did end up golding that Vader, since it was the first time he did the drop and warp in room 1 and runs. I think his gold before that was a 227, and he's getting a 225 here.
Interesting.
2-second gold. Yeah, only losing like around 35 seconds to Saab in that episode.
Yeah, definitely like a 227 is still easily on the table. Maybe even a 226. Just barring, Falcon Flight and any other potential time losses in some of these more difficult levels in episode 5. But he could easily be leapfrogging here. Then again,
Well, missing pillar clip.
oh, and TFRESH taking a death, dying, Invader. A little too ambitious with his positioning of players, with the fire that was just spraying all over the place. You should be careful for that. And that death probably cost him 5 to 10 seconds alone. So he's actually losing time to DIMEI here in this Vader.
Yeah, at this point, I would be very surprised if a leapfrog didn't occur. Because considering TFRESH is like about 30 seconds ahead of DIMEI at this point, and DIMEI has a mid-25 as his BPT, they would both have to lose about 3 minutes to their golds in order to not get a leapfrog throughout this episode 5. Which definitely can happen. They would just have to both play kind of poorly and get unlucky.
Yeah, and it's interesting to consider, but if we take into account the OBS crash for TFRESH, he theoretically would be on PB watch at this point, because he would be on low 226 best possible time entering 5. Unfortunately, it wouldn't be a valid run, but it's actually possible that he puts up a better race time than his actual PB.
Yeah, I think that's something TFRESH was kind of expecting going into this race. Because, like, in order to prepare, he has only been doing no resets. He has not done any, like, attempts, normal attempts, I should say. So all of his PBs recently have been no resets. So I guess it's very good preparation for this kind of race format.
Yeah, I don't think it's surprising for him. He's even just talked to me after he's gotten some of his PBs, saying that he thinks he can get a 225 pretty easily in the next few weeks, maybe even during this just practice and with ladder league happening. He has a couple minutes that he's planning on shaving down from his current PB of a mid 227.
Yeah, something interesting I noticed from DIMEI there is instead of like dropping out player one and doing the menuing, he paused on player two and did like the extras menuing on keyboard, which is probably a lot easier and quicker for him. And then instead of dropping out, he just unpaused and then dropped out player one. I don't think I've ever seen anyone do that, but I guess it makes sense if you aren't the greatest at menuing on controller.
It is a lot more finicky menuing on controller versus double keyboard menuing, so that would make sense. But I don't think I've seen that either. Just a tiny little strat difference that maybe DIMEI is a little more comfortable with. And it might just be something where, even though it might be technically faster to use controller, if he saves time doing it on keyboard compared to if he did it on controller, then it might just be worth it for him specifically.
Yeah, looking at FLUP's BPT right now, I wouldn't be surprised if all three runners got sub 230 this run.
Yeah, I do think that we will see that, which would be a bit surprising. I mean, not because it would be surprising from any of these runners, but if we look at the rung above this week, we had Anorak with a 229.07, Revilo with a 233.29, and Phantom with a 229.58. So we could see the rung below all beating every single runner above them. We could see that this run, which is crazy at this stage in the ladder.
Yeah, I think this is partially because of like the not great time that FLUP kind of put up last week. FLUP actually getting leapfrogged by Phantom since she got a 231. And DIMEI getting a pretty decent time, but losing his match, dropping down a run. And then TFRESH also just quickly improving. That's kind of the reason why these three runners with like relatively good PBs for the rung they're in are all together. But yeah, if you're FLUP in this situation, you really want to try and pull back as much time as you can right now, because a loss in this race means elimination. You face elimination next week in the bottom rung.
Yeah, and while that is very significant, of course, it is notable that any of these three runners will be incredibly competitive in the bottom rung. So even if they go to the lowest rung next week, they're threatened with elimination, but they also have the potential to leapfrog if they put up a really solid time next week. I think we've seen some just pretty solid Hoths overall. Nothing notable, no double spawns so far, unless FLUP gets one here. Doesn't look like she does. But nothing crazy in these Hoths. But we are getting into a bit more of an interesting level with Echo Base, where we see Boom Skip, and this is notable because this is another trick on the list that TFRESH is way less experienced and practiced in compared to these other runners. Now, it's not that difficult of a trick to get the setup and know the lineup, but it is definitely easier to mess up if you don't have as much practice.
Yeah, I'm definitely interested to see if like any of these runners maybe attempt it once and then decide to just not go for it after that and just do the room casually. Since we have definitely seen a couple of disasters on this trick actually in this week alone. We had the Harass Me disaster this week where he lost like almost a minute. And then last week, the Quasar disaster that basically cost him getting leapfrogged. But yeah, DIMEI getting a very clean boom skip first try.
Very good. I mean, I would go 4 out of 5 booms on the boom meter. I hope they're booming it up in chat right now. Very solid overall.
Yeah, that's definitely a 4.
I heard some people have the opinion that it's only a 5 out of 5 if you just jump into the transition, because that's like perfection.
Ooh, DIMEI taking a death.
Taking a
Yeah.
really weird death.
Talking about, I did actually see that opinion being thrown around in one of the previous matches. But honestly, jumping into the transition is so rare. I would say it deserves a 6 out of 5 on the boom meter.
I think I agree with that too, because like that's not what you're typically going for. So you should judge the boom based on what you're attempting. So if you attempt to go for it and then hit it, then it's better than what you typically do. I'm having a bit of trouble here in the buttons.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly how long the room is, but I'm pretty sure there was a second barrier where people were saying that it's a 5 out of 5 if you break that second barrier for the room.
I see TFRESH missing it, going immediately to push the turntable, giving up on it right away.
Yeah, that's definitely the smart play to do in this situation, especially if he's less experienced with the trick than the other runners.
Seedumnastic claiming we need to check the Geneva Convention to see if the boom meter can overflow to a 6 out of 5. I don't know if I agree with this take. FLUP with an interesting line to the setup. Doesn't end up working, but is committing to it at least one more time.
Yeah, that first attempt was slightly too high, I think, based on how she got clipped like on top of the cart. But getting a second try.
Getting a second try.
Saving a tiny bit of time to TFRESH, hopefully.
Yeah. No clip farming in Echo Base at this point. In fact, I think the only clip farming we've had so far this run has happened in Jabba's, with the unfortunate spiderless time loss for FLUP. That was only one miss for Boom Skip.
Well, it depends if you count giving up on the trick a miss, because that's definitely a doom for TFRESH there.
It is a doom for TFRESH, missing the trick and then giving up on it. I do think that that's probably the smart play for him specifically.
Yeah, just viewers hate to see it.
Yeah, the viewers hate to see it, but I do think it makes sense in the race setting, and also just with having a lead, you don't want to risk something like that just spiraling and causing you to completely lose the race.
Yeah, TFRESH definitely still hanging on to the lead by... I mean, if you count the penalties, TFRESH is only like around a minute behind, including the OBS crash, so you can say he's about 45 seconds ahead of DIMEI at this point.
Yeah, which is definitely not insurmountable for DIMEI. I mean, you can see that swing happen right here in Falcon Flight, depending on how good DIMEI's boulder is. I'm pretty sure we have seen some over 4-minute Falcon flights so far in Ladder League.
Yeah, I would be kind of surprised if the lead swung in this level alone, especially since TFRESH is known for being very good at Falcon Flight. I think the double controller in this room helps since it makes it slightly easier to mash to destroy the targets, and then also you have better lines on player 2 in the next couple of rooms.
Yeah, we'll have to see. TFRESH always has been an advocate that people do not know how to play Falcon Flight up until the boulder. So we'll have to see if he actually can show that in his gameplay here. DIMEI,
DIMEI hitting 3 targets so far.
yeah,
Could be 4.
unfortunate rotation on one of those that went to the back.
If he
Still
can hit
has
this
that
last
one
one, won't be too bad, but it's turning
going
away. Oh
lower.
my god, he hits it.
Great hit. A little lucky, but that's kind of what you need.
Yeah, not the worst boulder in the world, but I honestly wouldn't be surprised if TFRESH saved time here. Anyways,
Yeah, we're looking at a 345, which is definitely not terrible in a race setting, considering, I mean, you could lose an extra 20, 30 seconds to that if you get too unlucky. But TFRESH does have the opportunity to extend his lead a little bit further here.
yeah, that boulder definitely could have been way worse, especially considering how the last target was turning.
We'll have to see for TFRESH how his boulder is looking, see if he gets a slightly slower boulder with a better rotation. Getting a
Also
double
targeting
target.
on that last one. He's gonna
Somebody
be
needs
a
to
little bit
call him
upset
out.
about that one.
Yeah, call him out. Tell him he doesn't know how to play Falcon Flight.
Really fast boulder here. I don't know if this is what you'd like to see. Getting
It's
this
still,
first 2 targets right here.
I think that's a good speed. It's picking up a little bit, but the rotation is
He's
amazing.
gonna miss this last one or this 5th one here.
Yeah,
But the
both
last
of
2 should
them.
be turning towards the camera.
I think that last one's over the top. Just very unfortunate to round back. He's not going to be able to hit it, but it's coming lower down now. That should
Yeah,
hit.
lucky hit on the last one. If
Definitely
he didn't hit it
lucky.
there, it would have turned away again, losing even more time, but he should be saving a little bit of time to DIMEI, I think.
Yeah, definitely seemed a little bit better. FLUP, the final one coming up on Boulder. It's like TFRESH with a 340. So it was just a few seconds faster. FLUP's Boulder barely moving at all. Can be a good thing, can be a bad thing. Looks like this rotation is actually pretty beneficial if I think this last one can hit. Nice wraparound over the top of Boulder. I
DIMEI
think
also getting Dagobah button skip first try. Successful hut skip right here. This is shaping up to be a pretty good Dagobah.
he went back for Luke really early after hitting hut skip, which is interesting. FLUP getting
Not
a
even doing
340.
David slide. Oh my god, that's a
Yeah, no
huge time
David
loss.
slide. Loses about 20 seconds. FLUP tied TFRESH's 340 Falcon Flight. So all runners just within about 5 seconds of each other, which you love to see from a level like that. This has to be a little unfortunate for DIMEI, and he probably isn't watching the stream and doesn't know what's going on, but he is most likely unaware of TFRESH's OBS crash and that there's going to be time subtracted from the final time. So if he has like the stream open or is watching how the race is progressing, he might think that he has almost a 2-minute lead right. Or I guess more like a minute and a half lead. But in reality, that's not actually the case just given what happened to TFRESH.
Yeah, I think all the runners were messaged on Discord, so they should know about it, but it would be really unfortunate if something like this happened and they weren't aware, and then DIMEI maybe said, "Oh, I don't need to go for GTF," and then lost the race because of it.
Yeah, and it looks like from chat, they are saying that he does know. So luckily it shouldn't have too negative of an effect. TFRESH with a little risky strat there for hut skip. I thought he was a little far, but he does hit it. That was like insanely close for TFRESH. He did like an extra jump to try and get further on the rock. But luckily does not miss. That would have thrown a loop into this entire race at this point, just with how close everything is. Almost getting to see mushroom skip, which would have been a lot of fun. And FLUP also hitting it, meaning we went 3 for 3, no major disasters on Dagobah button skip or hut skip.
TFRESH having some double controller problems, having to go back all the way to the start of the room to get R2 to call back in, and then getting a redrop in.
Yeah, and I just want to point out, FLUP did in fact David slide.
Yeah, that is a massive time save for her. He will be saving a couple of frames to the other runners.
David not even in chat to celebrate.
Ooh, TFRESH taking a death from Vader. I've
Yeah,
actually,
unfortunate
like,
spot to
that
take
is
a death.
very rare.
Yeah, it really is. Barely on the box to get up top there. And I'm surprised that that jump slam actually hit Vader.
Yeah, DIMEI ending up with a 459 Dagobah. So, honestly, pretty decent considering he lost a little bit of time in the end room because of the bats.
FLUP struggling a little bit with the box force to get Luke up there. Not getting the slam either. So losing a tiny bit of time, taking a death with Luke, that doesn't make too much of a difference. We are seeing DIMEI enter CCT. Can be one of the harder levels mentally. I do think at this point people have adjusted pretty well to all of the tricks. But again, I think you can, with something like DV3 or even DVT, you can kind of get into a spiral after you miss something once. Hopefully we won't see that with Panel Fly. Looks like a great setup, perfect line. No issues there. Did a good job waiting just to make sure the platform was extended enough.
Recently, there's been a newer setup for DVT, which allows you to get the force push to get R2 out of bounds without pause buffering. I'm not sure if we're going to see any of the runners go for it. DIMEI definitely didn't.
I would assume not, just because it's such a feeling-based setup where you really just have to get used to that rhythm. So I think it'll take a little bit of time before people would adjust to that enough to do it in runs. DIMEI on DV3 getting shot right on the ledge.
I don't think that mattered because it didn't look like you got to jump a second try DV3. That is exactly what you need from DIMEI.
It really is almost looked like he was setting up for DV4, but decided not to. Very solid CCT overall.
Yeah, I think honestly, outside of losing a little bit of time in the 249 room, and then the second try DV3, there was like no mistakes.
Yeah, very, very good. Hopefully TFRESH is able to kind of match that, because TFRESH still maintaining about a 20-second lead.
Ooh, and deflecting the bullet into the stormtroopers. Very lucky that the last stormtrooper was able to break the door. If he accidentally killed that last guy, he would have been losing a lot more time. But TFRESH approaching DV1 panel fly right now. We'll see if he can match the one that DIMEI got.
Yeah, it is possible if T-Fresh loses, like, oh, misses the panel fly.
I don't think this is gonna work. He's so far back on the panel.
Yeah, I don't like this setup. This is not great for T-Fresh. If he loses around 20 seconds in this level, then it's a tight race between him and DIMEI going into Bespin.
Getting a third try, but he's already losing time to DIMEI's CCT, and he hasn't even attempted DV3 yet.
Yeah, currently looking at the Dagobah exit, the difference between the two, T-Fresh remains about
Popping back in bounds.
It's about 20 to 25 seconds gap between them, which means right here, right now in CCT, we could see DIMEI actually take the lead.
And too low.
T-Fresh
Wow.
taking a death during DVT. Almost certainly securing that DIMEI is now officially ahead in Bespin.
He has to pull it together, otherwise FLUP might take the lead as well off him. It still should be like a minute right now or so, but that could be made up in Bespin.
Yeah, and not only that, you still need to think about things like the wild card 8th seed time or the leapfrog. These are still things to consider for any of these runners. And we're looking at a point now where actually, like, even the likelihood of a sub 230 for T-Fresh is not looking as easy as it did before. DIMEI getting door clip first try.
TFRESH going for fast DV4 and almost getting it, but having trouble with the panel jump now. This is a really bad CCT from TFRESH.
Almost is securing DIMEI with the victory, where DIMEI actually has massive leeway. We'll have to look at this deficit as the split time comes in for T-Fresh leaving CCT.
DIMEI attempting GTF. He's on one heart though. Doesn't look like he's gonna lose the helmet.
Now, if we take into account everything... Oh, DIMEI was almost too low with that GTF attempt. Does get out of bounds. If we take everything into account, DIMEI has, like, over a minute lead on T-Fresh.
Yeah, and the first try elevator clip, all he has to do is hit bridge skip relatively quickly, and he will take this match.
And he will not only take this match, but he will RUNG 2. It's basically a guarantee at this point. All he needs to beat is a 229.07. And so far, this Bespin is showing that he's not going to be losing much time at all. He's probably going to lock in a 226 better than both of these other runners' PBs.
He did lose a little bit of time on door clip and then got his helmet shot off. So he is not on gold pace. But as long as he gets first try bridge skip, he should be stealing a 226.
Yeah, we can focus on him as he comes to a close here. The other runners just in the early stages of Bespin. Really, this is the important part to seal the deal, secure the victory, and the leapfrog after being behind since since the end of episode 4. An interesting setup, does adjust well, kills R2, but gets over. And is going to tap it in for a victory just in these last couple of levels.
Yeah,
Ending
26-47. That is a massive, massive improvement over his match from last week. And that's probably exactly what he wanted to see.
It's also 2 minutes faster than FLUP's PB. Or sorry, 20 seconds, not 2 minutes. It's 20 seconds faster than FLUP's PB and like 40 seconds faster than TFRESH's.
FLUP going for GTF as well. She probably needs it if she wants to beat TFRESH at this point.
Yeah, this is not like super, super close, but it is definitely a race depending on what TFRESH decides to do. I mean, TFRESH might decide just to not go for it and just tap it in, but he does have Lando on P2, so he is going for it.
And FLUP hits the elevator clip third try.
So unless TFRESH has some major mistakes here with GTF, he should be able to tap it in for second place.
Oh, jumping
Does miss
slightly
it.
too early. The height was perfect, but he just jumped slightly too early.
Very
Getting a second
clean
try.
second try. Should get the respawn with that too. Making sure to play it safe with the line out of bounds does get the respawn. So definitely making up some ground compared to FLUP's GTF. So FLUP will be the next up for bridge skip. We'll get to see what her final time is. And then we will probably have to wait a second for TFRESH's final time, just so they can take into account all of the penalties and then the OBS crash as well.
Yeah, I believe DIMEI's final time already includes the 10-second penalty because he got a 2:26.37 as his timer, like on his timer. FLUP pushing Chewy a tiny bit. I don't know how much that's gonna matter.
Should be
Getting a lot of
fine.
damage boosts. First try bridge
Wow.
skip.
I actually didn't know if she was going to get up on the ledge there. Was able to adjust slightly to make it, and does finish out the run. Probably looking at a low 229 here. Or high 228, 228.58.
2:28.58. TFRESH
TFRESH
also
push.
pushing Chewy. That is a lot farther.
That was quite a bit.
That is not the line.
It's not the line. I don't know if it's because he pushed Chewy. Could have been part of that. But he needs to get it here or enemies are going to start spawning, and this could be really bad for TFRESH.
Okay, getting it.
Wow.
And I think that should be TFRESH second place.
Should be. We'll have to wait for the final calculated time. 228 flat.
flat. And wow, that's FLUP beating every single person in the rung above, but still getting demoted and ending up in the elimination rung next week. That is crazy.
Yeah, FLUP getting demoted, DIMEI leapfrogging, and TFRESH with the OBS crash only playing like 30 seconds off of his PB. Crazy race for all of these runners. Just wild overall to see how many swings happened throughout each of the episodes. Obviously, looking at it, it looks like DIMEI just had a lead throughout. But then if you take into account the OBS crash for TFRESH, starting at the end of episode 4, he was a decent amount ahead, like 30 seconds at least ahead through the back half of this run, and all of it was thrown in CCT. That was the make or break for TFRESH losing this race. So just crazy overall. And very exciting for what that means for the upcoming weeks. So
Yeah.
GG's to all the runners. We have another match tomorrow. We have the Rung 6 match, which is an elimination match, and that is between Twicelight, Zoda, and Quasar, my apologies, which is also significant just because it is elimination. So it is a very high stakes match, as we are just a couple of weeks into Ladder League. It's insane to be looking at this bracket and just seeing the amazing times that have been put up by these runners.
Yeah, also now that this match is finished, we know all of the matchups for next week other than the elimination run. So we are still waiting to see who will win this race. Or I guess the elimination rung and the second to bottom rung, assuming there might be a leapfrog.
There is a potential, like Twicelight or Quasar could be leapfrogging into the rung above. That is definitely a possibility if they're able to get like a sub 230 in a race setting, which, I mean, with Quasar's recent PB is definitely a possibility. So we'll have to keep an eye on that tomorrow. But I think for today, that's going to do it. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And make sure to tune back in tomorrow at 2 p.m. EST for the final race of week 2 of the Ladder League.